Be willing to keep practicing, learning, and getting a little better each day. Hi, my name is Phil with Morris Writers. On the left is a sketch I drew in the early 80s, probably when I was about 15 years old. On the right is a reimagining of that exact same character and pose drawn 4 decades later, in fact, yesterday. Looking at them side by side, it's easy to think, well, obviously you must have gone to art school. But I didn't. In fact, in college, I got my degree in applied physics. I'm sharing these today not to show off, but to talk about a simple truth that applies to art, writing, or anything else you build in life. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is the willingness to keep practicing, keep learning, and get a little bit better each day. This was my starting line. Early 80s, I had been drawing before this, but this is the first image that I have that I had scanned and kept through the years. Pencil on paper, a superhero pose with the energy rings around the hand. When you're 15, there's usually a massive gap between the grand vision in your head and what your hand can actually execute on paper. The lines are hesitant, the proportions are stiff, and the anatomy isn't quite there. But the enthusiasm was 100% real. I didn't care that I wasn't an expert, I just loved creating. I didn't take formal art classes. Instead, art was something I did in my spare time, drawing late at night, filling sketchbooks, and experimenting. By 1985, around image 2 here, you can see subtle shifts happening. The shading gets a little softer, character designs become more playful, and line confidence starts to creep in. Growth, when you're self-taught, rarely happens in giant leaps. It's compounding over time. You draw 50 bad arms until one day, without realizing it, you draw a good one. By 1987, something surprising happened. Even though I was studying physics in college, I had a lot of time between classes, so I would draw. There was an art student I had befriended that was curious what art track I was in. And of course, I told her physics, and she conned some of the art teachers to let me sit in on some classes. They encouraged me to enter their contest, to be in their yearly art magazine. I submitted an illustration similar to the piece here, but I had done something different with dramatic lighting and inverted it to be light on dark. To my shock, they put it in the inside front cover. I wish I still had that image. That single moment of validation was huge. It proved that you don't need a specific degree or a formal title to be competent. You just need the courage to share your work and the tenacity to ignore the critics. That boost of confidence gave me the push to study the things inspiring me at the time, specifically the explosion of anime and manga in the late 80s and early 90s. I began experimenting with bold line work and vibrant color techniques, created my own cell animations on transparency film. I started entering pieces into regional art shows, and to my amazement, people actually started buying them. Even then, art remained a hobby. Life takes us in many directions, careers, families, different paths, but keeping a creative spark alive in the background changes how you view the world. It teaches you to observe details, light, structure, and story everywhere you look. Of course, through the years, I got better. I built up my brain bank of poses, layouts, tricks, and techniques, all pulled from artists I liked and even some I despised. They were so good, they needed to be despised. I draw in many styles, but I still go back to an anime or manga style. I like how expressive they can be with few lines and relative lack of detail. Which brings us back to today. 4 decades later, I sat down to recreate that very first 15-year-old sketch. Looking at this cleaned up reimagining, the differences are obvious. Dramatic foreshortening, explosive energy, dynamic line weight, and a real sense of depth and motion. I still don't like the left arm raised like that, but I wanted to keep the same pose. The arm now doesn't look as awkward. But what I love most isn't the technical improvement. It's the dialogue between who I was then and who I am now. The 15-year-old who drew that first sketch didn't know how far the journey would go, but he laid the foundation just by picking up the pencil. We live in a world that often demands instant perfection. We look at masters of artists, published authors, and experts in any field and feel intimidated by where they are today. But we forget that every master started with stiff lines and awkward drafts. We are here on this planet to learn, adapt, and to grow. Everything we do gets better as we use it. Whether you're picking up a pencil, writing your first chapter, learning a language, or trying something entirely new at 60, it doesn't matter where you start. The magic is in the decision to get a little better each day. So dig up that old bad sketch or early drafts. Don't hide them. Be proud of them. They are proof that you had the courage to begin. If you have a project from your early days that you've reimagined, or if you're working on building a skill step by step, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Thanks for watching. Keep creating, and I'll see you next time.